Ships or Shipsy? Only you can decide. Find out more at shipzorz.com. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts and Coffee. I hope you're having a great week so far. Grab your coffee, join us for some supply chain topics. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff today. Brian Glick from chain.io is here, and yeah, we've got some good articles, so stay tuned for that. But first, I want to let you know what is happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain this week. So yesterday, we released an episode. It's a woman in supply chain episode, Sanya, and she is in charge of HR over at Apex Logistics. I absolutely love this episode because she's talking all about HR in logistics, all about the people, how to put the people first, what it was like in her journey, and how she actually learned some of the HR processes, as well as how she implemented that in her logistics journey. So go and check that out. It's episode 163, wherever you subscribe to the Let's Talk Supply Chain podcast. And we've already got some great feedback and comments coming in from that. So go and check that out. Also, we are releasing Blended episode 3. So Blended is our new series about diversity and inclusion. This is episode 2 that I'm showing you right now that's already out. But next week, we're going to be releasing episode 3, which is the gender equation. And we're talking all about women supporting women. We're talking about men and women in the workplace and so much more. So join us for that next week. And if you haven't listened to it, go and check out episode 158, which is the episode 2 for Blended on that one. What else is happening this week? So yesterday I just recorded episode 4 of Blended, and I can't wait to share that one with you in January as well. This Friday, I am going to be speaking at the High Performance Summit, Sales Summit, and it's for salespeople in logistics. So if you're looking for a summit like that, I mean, I haven't really heard of anything tailored to sales in logistics. And so if you'd like to get more information, go and check that out. We will put the article in the comments a little bit later. I'm also emceeing the incubator, the innovation incubator over at IANA, the Intermodal Association, on Thursday. And I can't wait for that because there's some really great innovation that's coming out from that as well. What else is happening? Oh, I should probably tell you guys that last week Ships won the Woman Tech Award for Women-Led Startup in Tech. Yay, I'm super excited. That was a whirlwind day for me. I changed my pitch. I changed the way that I was actually pitching what we do at Ships. And I thought the judges hated it, but it turns out that they absolutely loved it, and we ended up winning the award. So super excited for that. I think we're going to be doing it again in June, and just really grateful to Women Tech Network for putting that conference together and allowing us to be a part of that. All right, so we're going to bring Brian up to the stage. Good morning, Brian. You got your coffee ready?
I have my coffee. I thought it was thoughts or coffee, so I only brought coffee. So you're going to have to do thoughts.
Well, I hope not, because I don't want to be doing all the talking. But anyways, I guess we'll see. What's in your coffee? How do you make your coffee?
Oh, my coffee is black. My coffee is plain Jane black.
Oh, okay. So I put some collagen powder in mine.
I don't even know what that is, but that's cool.
Yeah, and MCT oil. And then I also put coconut milk in there as well.
On Saturdays, mine gets Bailey's.
I was going to say.
Which I'm sure is morally equivalent to everything you just said.
Are you going to be honest about what's in your coffee today?
On weekdays, it's black. On Saturdays, it's about 80% Bailey's, 20% coffee.
All right. For those who don't know you, why don't you let everybody in on who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Brian Glick. I am the founder and CEO at Chain.io. I've been in logistics since we lived in a different century, and we at Chain.io we work on helping supply chain related companies talk to each other electronically. So we run all the pipes behind the scenes that let agents talk to freight forwarders and shippers talk to carriers and electronic invoices and all of that EDI and APIs and all of those buzzwords. We sort all of that out amongst all the different companies in the industry.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. And thank you for that introduction. So, and you're based out of Philadelphia,
I
correct?
am, yes.
Tell us a little bit about Philly. How's Philly doing right now?
How's Philly doing? Philly's doing. We are a resilient city, so we actually are doing, in spite of all of the things going on as a city, we take a little bit of pride in our toughness and have been doing all right down here. So
Awesome.
we're
Awesome.
not
Well, I
as
just
not as smiley as necessarily people from Toronto, but we have we bring it when it's needed. So,
that might be a Canadian thing. I don't know.
a little bit.
Just going to give a shout out to people over on my personal LinkedIn. Colin Russell, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. Peter, good morning. Rajesh, thank you and good morning. Davin, good morning to you. And India, hello. Thank you for joining us again. Christina, she's got her coffee in hand. She is joining us as well. So thank you so much for everybody joining us over on my personal LinkedIn page. So let's get started. So the question of the week, we always ask a question of the week every single Wednesday morning across our social media. And we're going to give you a sneak peek into what that question is for tomorrow. And we're going to be asking Brian the question as well. So the question of the week is, who are your supply chain icons? And I know you sent me a note and you were like, where are we going with this? What does that look like?
So,
Is it company, person? I mean, and I said, it's completely up to you.
so I'm actually changing so I had a whole answer in mind, and then I woke up this morning and I went on LinkedIn and I saw something that changed my answer, which
Oh,
was I am going to give a huge shout out right now to the DCSA, which is
okay.
the Digital Container Shipping Association, which is the consortium put together by all of the, or most of the major carriers. I think the 9 of the top 10 or 11,
Wow.
and they are working on standards in our industry. And they came out this morning with a document for for a standard for the electronic bill of lading.
Okay.
And while that is exciting in and of itself, the reason I'm bringing them up is that in that document, they put together a really comprehensive list of terminology and what those words actually mean, right? So what does onboard actually mean, and what are all these different things? And one of the things that's frustrated me to no end is sitting down with different people across the industry, and nobody knows what any of the words mean. And we all have completely different definitions for what arrived means, right?
Yes,
Is
we do.
arrived when the vessel arrived? Is it when the truck pulled into the gate? Is it when the stuff is out of the container and all of that? And so this team has put an amazing amount of effort over the last 2 years into moving the industry forward, right? By getting some commonality and not being being collaborative and not prescriptive in how they
Okay.
do it.
Awesome.
So that's one of them. And then I should probably the other answer that I was going to give was really to the team, and a lot of these people have been diverse or sort of spread through the industry over the last few years. But the team that I worked with over at Ralph Lauren for many years, over the 2000s and 2010s, in their supply chain and trade compliance groups. So these are people like Anne Marie DiDoranto and Maureen Gray and Frida Bailey. These people all. That was a team that really helped me shape the direction of my career. They were a customer through several companies, including one that I founded, but they were massively focused on doing the best possible job, right?
Okay.
So not just saying what is the minimum level of trade compliance we can do to
Right.
not get a penalty, but how
Mhm.
can we go to Washington and be involved in making trade policy? Or how can we, look at carbon effects back in 2004 instead of just starting to talk about it today? So the culture that team brought really helped guide a lot of how I think about doing things in my career. And I took most of their ideas and ended up starting companies based on their good ideas, but they always get a discount for it. So
Awesome. Well, it's also about like making an impact, right? Like it depends on your definition of who and what is an icon. And I think, I'm glad that you shared that, because I think it's where you can make an impact, or even being intentional about making an impact. And I think that's what that story really talks about. When I was thinking about icons, two things came up for me as well. One of them is Catherine Wengel. She is the EVP and Chief Global Supply Chain Officer over at Johnson & Johnson. And the reason why I say this is because probably, I don't know, I would say probably about 7 years ago, when I started going to trade events and conferences and all that kind of stuff, she was the first female speaker that I saw up on stage that had, the title within a large company and was running supply chains for Johnson & Johnson. And it wasn't just that. It was really her delivery and how she was talking about things. And it was very, very inspiring. And so that's really stuck with me for a really long time. And I would like to just, mention her as an icon for me. And then I think the other thing right now that has to do with what's going on recently are the people that are fighting for the seafarers. There's a bunch of people, and so I don't think that I could call each one of them out specifically, because there's a lot of people and I don't want to miss anybody. But I think that those people, and I know we've talked about seafarers on this show before and what's happening with them, but I think that, the people that are rallying around this cause and really going out to make an impact right now are people that I would consider icons as well. And so I think for both of us, we kind of have that, professional icon, right? And then we've also got the icons that have made an impact and that are making an impact and intentional about making an impact. So I like that.
Yeah, I think when you've been doing this a while, right?
Yeah.
You start to realize that the people who play the long game are oftentimes the ones who are doing the right thing in the moment, right? And that if you're sort of guiding yourself by that, then a lot of the details of how you promote things, or how you these short-term things, we all get caught up and kind of go by the wayside. And when you look back over 20 or 30 years, you can say, okay, the people that you really remember are the ones who were doing the right thing at the time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Davin and Rhonda over on my personal page are having a great conversation, just so everybody knows. Want to say good morning to Andrew. He's just joined us over here. Morning to Rhonda. And Peter said he wants to join more of these. So thank you so much again for joining us. So now we're going to talk about my thoughts and coffee post, which I posted on Sunday, which I always do on Sunday mornings, just as a reflection of, things that have happened for the week, or a reflection for me of what I want to put out in the universe. And so what happened last week is, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, was that we got a big win, right? A supply chain tech startup won a woman-led startup in tech award, which is huge. And Brian, you know this, because a lot of times we're up against like life-saving devices or, marketing, digital marketing, AI platforms and things like that. And so those resonate a lot more with a lot more people. If you're not in supply chain doesn't necessarily resonate. And so for us to be able to win that award was really, really big. And my tribe, and you're part of that, Brian.
Yeah, managed to get a screenshot when I had to drop off the call, by the way. Thanks for that.
Oh, yes. Sorry. You were not in that.
I didn't make the screenshot.
I tried to get everybody, but I definitely missed you. But at least I have you on Thoughts and Coffee today. But the tribe came together on Thursday night, and they if you look at the post and you look at the picture, they put up a congratulations, Sarah, like Zoom background behind them. and it was amazing. And so I just wanted to talk about about the big win, and then B, about how does your tribe show up and support you, because that really makes all of the difference. When you read this, what did you think? I mean, you're an entrepreneur too, so
It's so I don't like to spend a lot of time talking about how like hard it is to be an entrepreneur, because we all choose to do this, right? And it's
yeah.
not, we're
Yes,
not put in a
it's a choice.
position where you have no other thing you could do with your life, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is isolating, and it is you have to be very careful with your team
Hmm.
that you're not internally self-promoting, right? And that when you're celebrating a win, you're celebrating it for the team,
For the
right?
team.
But we should all be honest that we're people,
Mhm.
and it is important to have a group of people who understand what you do and can celebrate with you,
Yeah.
right? I've been I debate a lot internally whether, I made a decision very early in my career that I keep my personal life and my professional life pretty distinct and separate. And
Mhm.
what that means is that most of my day-to-day friends, they don't understand what I do, right? It's very hard. It's hard enough for me to explain it to supply chain professionals. Which means that we don't really get to celebrate there. So finding a safe space with professionals in your environment where you can be positive and celebrate, I think is an important mental health thing
Yeah,
for people in leadership positions.
absolutely. Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and I
I
think
would
we used to do a lot of that at conferences, right? Like you would just
we
sort of be able to
did.
just chat and
Yeah.
just like, hey, I got this thing done, and it was a little less. It wasn't out there like social media. It wasn't gonna resonate. As sort of that disposable kind of
Mhm.
praise.
Mhm.
I do miss that a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with you, and actually, we should ask the audience to weigh in, and, after you did the introduction, do they understand what you do? So if you wanna weigh in, make a comment, because 'cause I'd like to know. No, but
And
I
if
think you're
and
right.
if anybody doesn't understand what we do, I could spend the next hour talking about that, and you could all take a nap. So,
Sorry, I had to. But no, you're absolutely right, and especially, in this time right now with everything that's going on and everybody being isolated, it is isolating even more being an entrepreneur, and it's great to have a tribe like that, and I would encourage people to find that tribe and make sure that they have the tribe that, levels you up, calls you out, celebrates your wins, that kind of thing. And that you can have, really great in-depth conversations about different things and not take things personally. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to write that article. So Luke Small, is over on my personal LinkedIn. Morning and congrats on the award. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for joining us. Now we're going to get to our supply chain topics. So the first topic, the pandemic will create a better supply chain. And while we're talking about supply chain icons, I mean, you can't really talk about supply chain icons without talking about Laura. And Laura actually wrote this episode. So it's not this episode, sorry, this article. And so it's very timely with the question of the week that we have this week and featuring this article. So, what did you think when you read this article? I have a couple of things that, I want to talk about from this article, but I thought it was short and sweet and very to the point.
yeah. So actually, I think the first thing it almost goes back to what you just said about pitching ships within a context of things that are not supply chain,
Right.
right? Which is that this idea that that supply chain is the afterthought
Hmm.
is just not going to be the reality anymore, right?
Right.
We are, it started with the tariffs and the China-U.S. trade war, that bringing part of supply chain into the front, and then the second, with the distribution of this vaccine. I think when we look at this next generation that will be coming into the workforce in 5 years,
Hmm.
uh, they will have grown up talking about supply chain, right?
Hmm.
It will not like this understanding of the intricacy of how things are built. Like there will likely be, and they might not be good movies, but there will be movies made about
Hmm.
something, where it's an
Movie.
action movie and it's all about like they'll steal plot lines from this, right? The next 5 James Bonds from now, he'll be talking about some vaccine that needs to be distributed, right? And how
Right.
they're gonna taint the vaccine or whatever it is. And supply chain is gonna be part of that. And
Yeah.
so I think it's really interesting that it's this very firsthand thing. The other thing I thought that was interesting was how it is forcing companies to get a little more real about
Hmm.
kind of cutting the fat. Like there's a comment in here about Coca-Cola stopping marketing on tab, and that really being about just when you have lots of brands and lots of manufacturing requirements, and they talk about the labeling changeovers and all of that stuff, that
Mm.
you can just this is a distilling moment to, okay, what is my business really, and what is important, and what do I need,
Yeah.
and how can I make sure that kind of from a shoring perspective, that there's just that I have that resilience, as opposed to just having an overall picture of like all of these things we could be doing.
Yeah, well
So,
said and well done on that one. And I think for me, the example that kind of hit home in this article was they were talking about automotive,
mhm,
and their supply chain team was located in North America. And so
mhm,
they were very focused on the North American news, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but they weren't paying attention to what was happening in Asia. And so the reduction of automobiles being bought in North America, however, was declining. However, in Asia, it was picking up. And so now they have an issue of having to work 24/7 to get through the back orders, because they were focused, because their supply chain team was in North America and only really focused on North America, not really realizing what was happening in the rest of the world. And so the other things that she talks about is how COVID is very much different from any other disruption that we've seen in supply chain, because it's disruption after disruption after disruption after disruption. I think a lot of people can, resonate with that and agree with that. The other thing that she said, and out of that example that I just gave, was redefining from the outside in our supply chain processes and using market signals on top of consumer demand and consumer buying behaviors are really going to help drive some of those processes forward out of this pandemic. So really great article. I would encourage all of you guys to go and read it. It's in the comments. And now we are moving on to our second one, just so we have time for all three. This one I thought was really cool. So the Amazon of Africa, and they're called Jumia, I think it is. And so this is a rather long article. However, I thought it was important because what they're talking about is a shift. So they kind of went from the Amazon model, and they were going with the Amazon model. They were going into warehousing and all sorts of stuff on the logistics side. Then now they're shifting into sort of a Shopify e-commerce model, and they're outsourcing all of their logistics, which is interesting. And the other thing that I realized from this article was that Africans like to pay in cash. And so they had to rewire originally their logistics strategy to include a pay on delivery type option as well. So I don't know about you, Brian, but those were kind of some of the takeaways that I found from this article that I thought were really interesting.
So yeah, so I think one thing, just to clarify there on the paying in cash, I think that there's a little bit of a country by country cultural difference in different countries
Yeah.
in Africa, right? Because there were some areas, some countries where they were sort of leaders in the original kind of mobile payment before smartphones. So
Yeah.
I think there is sort of sometimes we lump Africa a little bit more than we should, and I think there's a lot of nuance to that continent in the different cultures. But I think what I
Great
took
point.
away from this article was the idea that sometimes you have to build the thing below the business you need to build, right? Or figure out how to do that. So, you can't have a marketplace without digital payment, right? You can't
Right.
have a marketplace without figuring out your supply chain plan that's appropriate for your market. And I think with all of us who are trying to drive things forward, sometimes you have to say, are all of the component requirements, you can't have electric cars without charging stations, right? You
Mhm.
can't have charging stations without a power grid, right?
Right.
And so, like, are you starting a business that's 3 steps past where everything else is? And I think in logistics, often it's like, I would, if I think back again 20 years, like this idea of multimodal shipments and air-sea mixes and all of that, the industry wasn't, you could have envisioned it, but you couldn't do it, right? And so make sure that you are solving the next problem. And if you're 3 problems ahead, you better have the money, which they've been losing money for a lot of years, to build the first 2, 3 things that have to happen before you get there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, and thank you for correcting me on that as well too, because you're right. There's it's a continent, right? So, and it really depends on the different cultures that are within Africa. But that was one of the things that they said that they had to overcome in their initial stages, and now they're outsourcing their logistics and they're doing this third party thing. So I encourage everybody to go and read that article as well. It's really interesting because it goes through their evolution. It also talks about their $1 billion IPO and how they have spent money, lost money, and the percentages of what they're looking at gaining back by revamping their strategy and revamping their logistics and supply chain as well, which I thought was pretty interesting too.
Yep.
All right. So now we're talking about vaccines. I mean, I don't know about you, but like every news channel is talking about vaccines. And this morning on the news that I was watching, there's a lady a 91-year-old out of the UK that just got the first vaccine shot. And it'll be interesting because it looks like the UK is going to be the first one to get it. However, this article from Supply Chain Dive, I thought was interesting as well, because it looks like UPS. So first of all, it looks like packaging is now the new superhero of supply chain right now because of the vaccine and what needs to be done to be able to distribute this vaccine globally. And it looks like UPS is going to be part of that. And so they're actually in dry ice production, which I didn't know. They're also partnering with other companies that are providing freezers and different things like that we probably don't think about needing within the supply chain. But for this vaccine, we're definitely going to need dry ice. We're going to need freezers. We're going to need all sorts of temperature control from one end of the supply chain to another.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work. Even before COVID, several years ago, I was doing a lot of conversations with a lot of the US-based airports on pharmaceutical grade supply chains and traceability. And, at that point, it was more about like, how can I get more air traffic through my airport? Now that doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue. But, it was, it's interesting, all of the different, especially, I can speak more specifically to the US here, but ground handlers and the airlines and the truckers and how they're all independent. And we really have never had a good cargo community here around that, and how this is going to really force, I think, companies to think about all of their other partners in that network and how they fit together, and, who does make the dry ice and who can pick it up, and how are we going to basically do 20 years of innovation in like, 20 weeks. So just, for most of us and most of these companies, the timeline we're talking about when they say, I saw an article that Pfizer says they might not have the vaccine ready for distribution until July, right? Well, let's be realistic. For most supply chain companies, if you start a project now that's going to be in July with a global rollout, that's ridiculously fast, right? So we got to suddenly, like, there's going to be a hot mess under the hood, but we're going to get this done. So.
Well, yeah. And I think, if anybody can do it, supply chain professionals can do it, right? But they're also talking about other challenges that, we've talked about or we've seen in supply chain. We don't talk about it very much. Theft is one of them. Right. So obviously there, traditionally in supply chain, there has been theft. It's not something that you can really get around, but because this is such a valuable thing and everybody in the world is going to need this vaccine, they're very, very concerned about theft as well. And so that's going to take supply chain to a whole nother level, because now we're also talking about the security of the product. And it's not just stealing a pair of shoes from a box in a warehouse. Right. It could have dramatic effects globally. So what do you think about that part?
What do I think about that part? First of all, how awful of a human being do you have to be to steal the vaccine? But that aside, I think it's where all of this work that we've done on traceability and compliance comes into case here is, because what I would actually, it's almost, you think about theft, but then you also think about counterfeit and product replacement. And, if I steal it and replace it with a vial full of water, right?
Yeah, that's the other part.
What have I done to another human being, and all of these things? So I think, while we're all going to try to go fast is not the only goal here. Right.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a little bit of a tension there.
Yeah, because we all need to be safe. Well, that wraps up. I swear the 30 minutes gets faster and faster every single week. I want to thank everybody over on my personal LinkedIn. I know Joe joined us and Ed joined us as well. So just to say hi to you and thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for everybody else for joining us also on our Let's Talk Supply Chain, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter as well. And of course, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today, bringing your wisdom, talking to us about what you do at chain.io. Go and check him out at chain.io or connect with him on LinkedIn. And until next week, Audrey joins me again, and we hope you have an amazing week, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.